So in this video I'll talk about frangipanis and how to keep them as houseplants. This one's about, well, I've had it about 3 years, so it's probably about 4 or 5 years in total. When I first got it, it was just down at that level there. So it's grown a lot. It's not the fastest, the stems don't grow really quickly, but the leaves grow very fast. And it's the leaves that really take up the space. I can show you here. They cover a good, get my hand for comparison, they cover a good 2-3 foot of space, just the leaves. So if you're growing a frangipani in a house, you'll need a lot of space. If I just step back, you'll see how much of my living room it takes up, next to my sofa and my bookshelf. Now frangipanis come from the tropics, so you will have to grow them indoors most of the year. You can have them outside in the summer, but the year that I have had mine in the summer, it grew very little, only about 1 inch in that year. So if you're in Scotland, they really need warm temperatures to grow. If you put them outside in the summer, they'll just sit there dormantly. If it's below 15 degrees, they won't really do anything, so you've got to have it somewhere warm, even in a house. You've also got to have lots of light, because they like lots of light. If you don't have enough light, you'll get it a bit leggy, but also there's less chance for it flowering. I've never managed to get mine to flower, but I've never been able to put it in enough sunlight. Where it is now, it gets plenty of light, but it doesn't get direct sun, and it's the direct sun you need for several hours a day to really get it to flower. And the watering, it doesn't need a huge amount of water. You want to let the compost dry out a little bit in between waterings, because it can be susceptible to root rot, and as it has quite succulent stems and it comes from somewhere that's quite arid in the wild, it doesn't need a huge amount of water. But obviously when it gets the size of a tree like this, it will actually drink a lot of water. But whilst it's younger, it doesn't need a lot, and even at this side, I'd let the compost dry out a little bit between waterings. So it's normally deciduous, depending on the situation. So this one that I've had here has been deciduous every year apart from last year. Now what it does is, when it comes to winter and the nights get longer, there's less light, and the temperatures get cooler, it reaches a critical point and it's just not worth it keeping its leaves, so it will go deciduous and lose all its leaves, and then it will grow them again in late spring, early summer, about May or June. Now if you do keep it in a very warm, bright position, it's possible to keep its leaves throughout the year. So this one's done it this year. This is the little gap here where the new between years. So everything up of that is all the new leaves, and you can see they're quite fresh. That's this year's, and this is below here is last year's, which is looking a little less fresh, but not too bad. As I say, if this was kept in a cooler place than it was, well, I've kept this quite warm last winter, so it's kept the leaves. But if you have it somewhere that's cooler or less light, it will drop the leaves. That's not a problem. You just move it to a cool position that doesn't get below 10 degrees, and don't water it. Make sure it gets really dry, because it won't be needing any water and it just goes dormant. If the stems start to shrivel up, then you will need to give it a little bit of water, but just keep it generally dry whilst it's dormant. And then when spring comes, move it to somewhere that's really warm, preferably hot, and with lots of sunlight, and just start giving it a little bit of water, but don't really keep the compost quite dry. Only get the compost damp when the leaves start to grow. You have to be quite patient with this though. Unlike the most deciduous plants, it doesn't seem to grow its leaves in April time. It waits until late May, sometimes June, so you have to be quite patient. And when the new leaves do come, they're often quite small. You can see here, these were the first leaves that came on. There was actually a couple of even smaller ones, but they've fallen off now. They'll be quite slow, but then every leaf progressively will get bigger and bigger, and then when you're into the middle of summer, you should get some lovely big leaves like that. So that's my frangipani. As I say, it's about 4 or 5 years in total. I've had it for 3 years. We need to be potting at the moment, but they can be kept and they're good houseplants. But you will need a lot of space, because after a few years they do take up a huge amount of space. As naturally in the wild, they are actually trees.